Hey everybody, I'm just going to get set up. Give me a few moments. Doesn't load fast enough. Trying to see how long it takes. There we go. Ooh, all right. So where I left off, actually got this structure starting to build and execute SQL for some query that I wanted to parse. Got a few things classified. And now I want to kind of adjust the code a little bit, abstract it out a little bit, and start adding more flags because I'm going to attempt to start calling from a non-system database. And yeah, so I'm just going to begin doing that. Just to catch up, what I had done on the last stream was I have this nice little structure called script that looks like basically most of all my other structures. If I can find it. And how script looks like, basically script is just this abstract concept of a particular line in a script, whether it's in addition to the end or a root object itself. Like here is a container for a specific script, and then we have a parent-child relationship that goes in and out, nested. But I can add all sorts of different items to it based on what line I'm in. And the procedure I created, this is it iterating, slowly building the query itself until finally I have the print. And offline, what I did is I tried to make sure that I could get my for JSON auto set up. So now when I run this script, I actually get some data back. So if I were to script output, let's see. Yep. So this will be the data that I go through. It's too long for SQL to parse it out, but I'll be able to send this block of data with some additional parameters and start parsing it. But I want to clean up this code a little bit because there are other things I'm going to have to add now. It's not just, for instance, getting a data set name and checking specific flags. Now I have to check the data set type. Is it external database? If so, what's the schema from that external database and all sorts of other stuff. So what I really want to do is take this information out. What it looks like is the only thing that I need in here I'm going to create something that will do this and then just spit out a data set name. So let me go ahead and highlight all this data. Now with this crazy master data management structure, all my code is stored in interface main, so that's where we'll be spending most of our time. Looking at what's happening here, this is sending me a specific value, so no need for a procedure. I can do this via function. Let's give under a script Is that the prefix I'm using here? Yep. Get dataset name. Dataset name will be the primary thing that I want to return. And I'm just going to move my code in here. Sweet. This kind of wait for later to actually go through what are the possibility or what are the possible things I could check, easily abstract it out. But for right now, the main goal is to try to make sure that we get this generating appropriately, so we can add to it a lot easier. Because I'll just keep my under here is where I'll keep my rules. So when I'm able to abstract them out, I'll already have a pattern here. All right. Type ID, dataset, look at the dataset name. But now, because this will be table. I created a new classifying structure because I already loaded I didn't load the tables, the data of the tables, but I loaded the table objects into my personal information schema, which consists of a system, database, data set, aka table, file, whatever, and a data point, which is just a column inside of a data set. Data sets of files might not have data points unless it's a CSV. That's how that abstract concept works. So I did load the data sets for Adventureworks already in here along with the columns, because I had to type and basically think of how this external thing is going to be. So for this particular item, everything that's common is mine. Like, I know what the format is. I only use DBO. There's no need for additional schemas. Database owner, my database owns it. But for Adventureworks, they use DBO and their own customized schema. So I created a new family that basically tells me, hey, the schema is the type. So dataset, type ID. Actually, what I'm going to do now is when I go and I get my dataset ID, when I get a dataset type ID, which is, I work in a hierarchical or classification system. So a dataset relates to a type, relates to a family, relates to a class, relates to a realm. So in this view, this data set has a data set type ID. Actually, I don't need. Actually, I will. Okay. I can do this anyways. DBO, SV, TBL, ref, data set family, select, where data set family. And when we're working in patterns, especially when we're designing objects with those patterns in mind, I can easily get what I want. Dataset type has a dataset family ID in it. But I'll need to declare this. Oh, glad I saw that. So basically, when I get my data set, I'm going to move backwards up the classification to figure out where I'm at. I might as well, for the sake of completeness, I might as well do this. Family, class. And realm. Yeah. So then I can actually use this. First, I will get the data set ID for the relationship to the script. Get data set name and type ID. Get get the rest of that data so I don't have all of these calls. We can do the tree. We can kill this. And should have done that first. All right, so now I have all my information that I need to make decisions on how I want to format that, because so is synonym will be at the end. Let's split this up. How do we want to split this up? If trying to weigh, but it's only why we abstract it out, why I don't want this piece of code in here twice, is that decisions like this, okay, right now I'm thinking about if the family is the type, I know I'm going to have to grab the type information from it. Probably also need the database ID, so I can do database.schema.type table. But then I also have an item for, is it a synonym? Well, the synonym goes on the data set piece. So, what should the order be? My system, I ignore schema is typed by itself. The schema is always DBO. So this is very custom. I'm programming a custom rule into the system. So, where does this order take place? Well, it's going to do this. Will it ever be a synonym in the external database? I don't know. Maybe in an external system, but I don't know. So, should kind of split this up with data set prefixes. Data set suffixes, and other data set modifications. So that will help me get a suffix of an alias. So I can have data set with a suffix, but a prefix. I can do all the, is it a synonym type dealy before I add the schema and database to it. Oh, I totally messed that up. Okay, let's do this. This would be other dataset modifications. I guess we'll say we'll want to get a flag dataset, use database. Attach the schema, use the database. Sweet. Don't want to separate these out. I think I can make these mutable. Since we're going to reuse this variable, what we always want to do is just get into the habit of nulling out the variable before we fill it in case the row isn't there. If the row is not there, it will carry on the previous value based on how I'm selecting it. If I were to build a select statement like this, I would actually get a null, but I don't like the way that looks. Versus this kind of stuff. So we'll just make sure to null it out, and darn it. We're going to say the absence of a flag is a false. So we can already see the pattern start to take shape based on, at least flags. So it might be this rules iteration where it says, all right, go process the rules flags, or, how we might do that, like prefixes, suffix modifications, overall modifications, and that will iterate through a list, which will say, oh, this is a flag. Here's how you handle it. Here's how you handle these things, because not much changes. If we're really consistent on how we classify our data, we're just really cycling through a type key name that will determine what action needs to take place. So this says if it's a synonym, actually it would be S in my case. So that would be another rule. because everyone does everything differently. Adjust for, well, to be completely honest, I would just call that the dataset name. I don't know, because people rename their synonyms. They don't just concatenate and say, hey, this is a synonym of this table. Sometimes got a completely different name. How I'm going to handle that, I'll worry about it when I get there, just because. This will be if the dataset family is of that variety. We're going to concat the same thing. And also another way to look at this, the separating, if the schema is a type, say this is use database flag. I definitely want to separate these out so I have an easy time trying to figure out what's going on. Let's say I made this structure build MySQL. I want to make this structure convert some of MySQL into MySQL so I can send it using execute external scripts, call my server where I have a MySQL database and I want to update that procedure. Well, MySQL doesn't have that schema option, so it wouldn't be under that type, but it could still use the database. So let's say we came in here. MySQL doesn't have synonyms as far as I know, because I think I tried. So it comes in here, says, all right, synonyms, there's no synonym flag on there, so it's going to carry the dataset name. Go over the schema type. You're like, okay, it's not of that type, but it does require a database. So then we get that database.dataset name that MySQL wants or uses, I should say. I could do this. So we'll need to get information for the data set. That'll be our data set ID. Oh. And this is where the database ID is. Data set has a database ID. That will help me grab the database name. Now, there's that other option of doing the same kind of thing that we're doing here, where we say, hey, because of a specific key that I have, well, I have the same structure for data set as I do for database as I do for data set. And table value function get database tree, no filters, same kind of deal. I can have an external application or an external type where I could use my type key name as the, maybe it's a linked server, maybe I have linked where the linked server is the type or what have you. So, or we can call a system a server itself, and just based on that pattern, because my system builds all these tables for me, all these functions, everything. This is what I assigned to the Adventureworks system. It's not part of mine at all. It's part of a different system. So you definitely program that into it just to get the data set up. So we don't have to have, when we look at SQL like we did in the last video, last live stream, when we looked at breaking this apart into this table structure, we looked at it line by line. So it only makes sense. This we didn't look at by line by line. We said, really it's a group. There's our particular type of join, and then under that you would have a data set or a subquery. So you kind of have this fork. How do I handle that? It's not the same line. So looking at line by line, we can just say this is a data set. It's equipped with an alias. It might have a synonym. It might have a schema. It might have a database and a server name part, like one line item. That's what we should think about when we're trying to configure this. So I will have to add a use database flag. Let's see, is there anything else that I might need? I don't think so. Oh, no, I'm gonna wait. Let's see if we can actually call it. Then I'll come in here and add aliases just in case, but let's call it. So I added the code here. Script ID in, generic text out. I'll save this. Right now, for this specific use database flag, it doesn't exist. So we can create the code and then do data edits later. But I'm going to do the data edit right now. I have a new flag type, and I know the last one I added, data set. Just kind of get used to the separation of data. I know that this is the data set family. So I have use database. So now when I call this, there we go. Easy enough. So now that I have a function, I actually shorten this code down to this is also a join data set. I don't have to worry about any of that information anymore. Cleaning up the code. And because I did that, this should still work. And I still get my data back. It still picks everything up. So easy like that. Even though we didn't give these data sets that are already there a specific value, we don't have to. If we just remember that we treat absent data as a false. If it's null, it's a false. see. That might be enough to at least attempt a more complex query. The first thing I would want to pull is the person table. I think that's where I would want to start with, just because, you know, we are people, and talking about the normalization of this data in here makes more sense, knowing that we are people and we can see it. Some things like, fortunately, I don't have to worry about that column because there is a demographics view, so I'm going to skip that entirely because this just seems like a lot of crap. So because I have the view, a view is just the data set in my, in this script building. Oh, I pinned it. As you can see, synonym of a synonym, that's a view of a table. So it's already calling views. So I'm glad I don't have to mess with XML, because don't do this ever. This is horrible. So yeah, let's try this. I want to create this query. We're going to leave this up. I don't need this anymore. All right. So thinking about, let's see, are any of these reserved? Nope. Okay. This should be pretty easy. To go function get script tree. So how are we going to do this? First, we need a root object. We're going to call this Adventureworks person.person. Actually, all I really want to see or what I use so far. Select group, select star group. So that's how I'm doing it. Excellent. Darn it. I'll just manually load it. Select group for all of these pieces of information. Just left them as that. This will be an item in the select. From group. From item, from data set. So it'll be from item. No where clause. So that was pretty simple. This is basically what our select statement comes down to. Oh, and I want a for JSON. So what was that? What did I use? 2. Names have to be unique. I could take that off. Because it doesn't really matter. The only thing that really matters that's unique is the key name of the root script, because that's where you're going to be starting. Everything else is irrelevant. You should be able to piece things together, create a path, that sort of stuff. But that's type 2. The unfortunate part is that my face will be in the way. So we're going to have to do this. All right. First type ID I know is the root t-sql thing. So I could say this is the Adventureworks person.person script. Let's give it a key name. Person. Under that, select group. Because realistically, I mean, each line in my system just represents a concept. So actually, I should do this a different way. We're gonna do this a lot easier. Let me make sure no emails come up. we go. Sorry about that. Oh, my favorite thing. So I'm going to escape out of this. I'm going to say okay. Script type ID for selecting a very specific column. I'm going to paste all my data in here. And I should be able to grab names. Is it going to keep everything or will it format it for me? Oh, thank you. Sheets for the win. I know I had some tabs in there. I just want to make sure that all that stuff is gone, and it's gone. So now, copy paste, copy paste, copy, and paste. What? Oh man. I get it. There we go. Actually, I could have just done this too. Let's see, from group 9, 14, and 2. Everything else is the same. F to T. Define the owner. And there we go. For 9, 50, 51. Select statement, 748, 49, 50, 51. Then we add 2 other ones at the very beginning, 23 and 24. 23 will be the topmost. Love working. It's the only type I have in here right now. Same kind of classification. This is telling me that this is a script to script relationship. It's kind of a unique design where we can relate any column to any column in any table or any row to any row from any table, because we have a specific data set number that's controlled by my information schema, my data set table, where it's a unique system-wide table ID. Can't really use object ID in SQL because you can drop, recreate, and mess with those object IDs, but this allows me to, this is the ID of the relationship table. You can see these IDs are the same. So this is parent to child relationship. of a script table to script table. So basically, I just need this as a record to go back, make sure I'm in A, remove this. I like markers, so I know what actually changes. So we have 23, which is the top container, and under that we have a select group. For the select group, under that we have columns. Under the main query, we have a from group. Under the from group, we have the data set. And then under the main query again, we have the for JSON XML. This helps me with sequences too. 20. And, oh, that would be 20. That would be 30. That would be 10. This is a sequence within the relationship to determine the order of what things should, or just in order. And I work in multiples of 10 because in case I need to inject something in between, it is very easy to make a 9 or a 5 or whatever, and then run a simple query, which is like, row number times 10, row number over order by the current, which would be not in multiples of 10, order by or multiplied by 10, to get back to where I am. So boom. This will get all my scripts related. But now I have to go through the tedious process of defining a couple of these things and where to define them. The properties of a script. A particular script ID has an added property, like a data point ID. So we can actually get the real name of the data point ID because that's a data point subject. This name right here is just for uniqueness to prevent stuff like this from happening. But realistically, none of this name doesn't mean anything. We're not going to use it in code. Actually, oh, that's why. Well, that's fine. Sweet. Do I need this anymore? I could save it. Actually, this doesn't really matter anymore. That could be my new thing to go off of. All right, so table value function, get reference. Nice. So another kind of sub relationship that I have, and this is a repeat from the last video, is not just do I have the relationship to relationship table. I mean, that thing is very malleable. Like, I have a person, I'm in one group, and then maybe I'm not. I work for one company, maybe I don't. I'm, a part of one forum and maybe a second forum. So the actual relationship table helps us deal with very dynamic relationships, changing relationships, allows us to recurse on the same table to find other dynamic and changing relationships. But when you look at like a dependent property, there is no way that this is going to function properly when I have my script defined as or typed as a specific data set or specific column if I don't know what it is. So that is where the reference crossover helps out, because it allows us to define a relationship very similarly as the one that I just put in, except for basically say this is a must. In order for you to exist and be functional, the reference relationship is a must. So let's see. It's not really doing any additional edits. I'll just use this as my eyes. Why'd I do that? There we go. This is all I have to deal with. Okay. There we go. So let Google save us again. Where we can use this to define information. All right, business entity, name, all that good stuff. Row good, modified. Here we go, script. So these are going to have data point relationships, which is reference type ID 7, which is 7. We go script ID. Okay, it's after table, then the other two. So script ID will change. This is for data set or data point. This is the ID. And this is the data point. Data point specific data set number. Mouthful. Okay, so I have all of these data point relationships. Oh, those should have went here. Here are the scripts. IDs. Now I'll figure out what data point IDs those belong to. Well, let's do a trick. Parse name. Parse name is a really cool function. Basically, it just splits on dots. But I always get this backwards. I think 1 is right. 1 is right. All right. Scripts, left join, DBO, SVTBL, ref, data point, select. Data point. Data point, name equals this. And data set ID and set select where data set name equals, I believe it, I have it as person dot person. Nope, I wouldn't. I would have to give it a very specific name. Oh, where data points data set ID is in here. Sweet. Data point name, data point ID. Boom, just what we needed. The data point IDs. Whoa, yep. Sometimes working like this above gets confusing because, yeah. All this other information is system flags, whether the record has security on it, you know, that kind of thing. Because the system is just a giant pattern. So now I can attach data points to those scripts I had. And to be completely honest, I already had the answer to my second question right here, which is what is the data set ID for that table that's supposed to go in my from. Select group. From group from data set. So script 50. And I remember it was type ID 8. But I do not remember, I think it's 20. Yep. So this will almost work. But we have to add a flag to this script ID, which is 50, which will be in a different table. That looks right. And that flag is going to be use database. So I want to figure out what type ID that is. It's not a synonym, but we're going to use database, so 13. Oh, I did that too fast. Let me double check. Source config dataset use database is flag ID 13. So once again, another table looks just like the first sequence. Let's see, the flag type ID will be 13. Where's the flag? Oh, here's the flag value. So for script 50, use database is true. Let's close all this stuff down. And Let's try it. What did I name it? Adventureworks person? Nope. Person. What should we do? We should just execute it, right? We should just run it and execute it. But we got an error. Nice. So this was the wrong type, and that is okay. It should have been a from item and not a from group. I should have caught that because I built this 2 days ago. Should have remembered. From group is what? I have it as 9. From data set 14. 14 it is. What's going on here? I'm not even seeing it build. Looks like it's just a relationship issue, right? Item. Why are you not recursing? Let's do it this way. Because that's the order we enter them in. Where is 23? Primary key implied 1. I think that is what I messed up. We should have 23 to 24. Top level to the first select statement. 23 to 49, 23 to 50. 23 to 24 doesn't look like it made it. There it goes. So this is where tools are going to be extremely important to actually build some sort of interface to do this. We got a double from. That doesn't look right. Should have a single one. I wonder if that's because how I copied my code while modifying that data set. I believe so. Nope, because that would be a join. Gets a little confusing, I know, I'm sorry. I have a from group in there, and I don't need a from group in there. I just need a from 49 to 50, 23 to 49. There we go. There we go. Maybe. There we go. I'll get used to it. I'll remember. Still fresh. That's massive. Nice. So I think we're going to have a slight problem that I just realized is that how do you query a script? You have to have that data ready to go. Can I do this? This would be generic JSON. Will you let me? Oh, you won't. Wait. The For JSON clause is not allowed in the insert statement. It is. I have not tried this before. I'm gonna learn. Let's learn together. This is interesting. The execute statement is reading what's above it. So, does that mean you let me do this? That's what I thought. But I want to compare. Okay, so basically what I'm going to need to do is do a slight modification to this whole thing to basically add a wrapper around this statement. So let's delete all this crap. It's relevant. So my last, what is in that variable right now is this. I'm going to need to put this inside of my script generation. Yes. I just want to see it work. I just want to be able to compare the two. I will compare the two. That should be a pretty easy thing to add. Boom. Oh, come on, regex. Replace tab with a new line, comma, the current selection. I just need some sort of variable. Sloppy. That could have been so satisfying. Nineteen nine seven two. This is going to be helpful with this is, okay, so now I have a JSON object from an external source. I guess that ran pretty quickly. We won't know until we really get down into this, but without requiring this part, I still have access to the data point names I'm expecting, and I can actually kind of create aliases so the alias can have a specific mapping. So a long while ago, I created a bot that runs from within SQL that scrapes Reddit. And I also did some videos on importing FEC data. God, where's my quality? There it is. So how I ripped some of these, especially from Reddit, is, well, Reddit API gives you JSON back. So I was able to get that JSON and then send it forward. So it was able to save that data for me. And I think I'm going to use this to process the Adventureworks. This is pretty cool that we got this far. But not this part. I don't like this part. I want to be able to add that to my script table. I don't want to be required to do this. That doesn't feel right. Because then what if it isn't? What if it isn't JSON? I want to be able to just say, hey, run a script that I have, and I want to be able to know that that script has specific variables that I need to add to parameters via relationships, via whatever extra things attached to that script that will let me know. It'll iterate through and say, hey, you can skip this because this is information for something else. So I'm going to eat dinner. Hope you guys enjoyed what's happening. And I will see you guys tomorrow, 1 to 3 Pacific time. You should bring me your questions. Have a good one, all.